show up, will show up. So welcome everyone to today's session of our Jet Report Success Series webinar. If you could just do me a favor, just put in the chat or the questions, whether you can hear me or not, just to confirm that you can hear me. I'm just gonna go ahead and keep talking under the assumption you can, and I'll check those chats and those questions in a sec. A quick introduction, my name is Brian Robinson. I'm the Training and Reporting Manager here at Jet Reports out of lovely Portland, Oregon, and thank you for chiming in that you can hear me. Fantastic. I've been with the company for about 4.5 years, and I love our product, I love our team, and I think this is a great company and culture, and that's why I'm always so excited to come in here and talk to you guys on a nearly monthly basis. It's been a couple months, but I'm back. I want to thank you all for joining me for the next 20 to 30 minutes as we talk about this topic of where to start and this idea of when you need to write a report, right? Shouldn't there be something we should do instead of just looking at a blank Excel file and going, what am I supposed to do? So that's what we want to talk about today, to give you some techniques, some kind of a path to follow that I think works for us and would work for you as well. So a little housekeeping as well, since this is a GoToWebinar, of course, everybody is out there on mute. But if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat, feel free to put it in the questions. I'll take a look at those. I probably won't stop to talk about those questions, and if I have time at the end, I'll go back and kind of talk about those questions. But if I don't have time for them, don't worry, I'll record a follow-up video and we will put that out on the web with this recording. So speaking of that recording, once this session is complete and ready for sharing, we'll make it available to you. You can go to our knowledge base, or you can go to the page where you signed up initially, and you can access this video as well as every previous video for the past year and a half, I believe, that we've been doing this. So lots of videos out there for you to go back and look at. For me, the easiest way to find it is just to go to our knowledge base, support.jetreports.com, and search for Success Series. You will find it very quickly, very easily that way. So now before we get started, you might ask, why are we doing this? Well, simply put, we want you to be successful with our product, all of our products. And sometimes these topics cover all of these products. Sometimes it only really focuses on one. Today, we're just talking about research and planning. So it doesn't really matter which one of these products you're using. I think today's topic is universally applicable. So we want to make you successful with our product. If you're happy using it, we're going to be happy to build it for you. And you're going to keep using that product and really encouraging us to keep moving forward. I did mention that this is a monthly series, and so our next two sessions, it always happens on the second Thursday of the month. So next month, Harry will be back to talk about our Jet Budgets tool. This is something that's going to be released in October. Come back and see a sneak peek, my goodness, I cannot talk today. A sneak peek at that tool, what it is and what it isn't, and all kinds of fantastic stuff. So you'll get to see that a few weeks before it actually comes out. And then in October, we're going to have Josh, a new voice, come on in, and he's going to talk about BI and how does that relate to Jet Enterprise. So another really interesting topic that a lot of people have been requesting, this idea of what is BI and what is it in relation to our products. So some awesome topics coming up in the coming months, so come back, check those out. The last thing I want to talk about is us as a company. Who are we and why should you be listening to us? Really, what we can say here is that since 2002, Jet Reports has made it easy for over 13,000 companies in 94 countries to access their data in real time within Excel itself. I don't have to know SQL. I don't need to know any other querying language. I just need to know how to build Jet functions, and I can pull that information directly into Excel in the format that I want with all the filters I need, and it gives the average user access to data and reports maybe they didn't have before. So you're not required to wait for your IT team to build some sort of SQL view that you pull out and clean up, right? So that's who we are. Let's get right into our topic so we have enough time to talk about everything. It may seem simple, but I really like to talk and kind of give examples as we go along. So our agenda today is we'll just give a quick overview of what we feel as a successful report writing procedure. We're only going to focus on a small portion of it, as you'll see. And then we'll get into an actual report request. And this is going to be a very simplified report request. We're not obviously going to be able to do anything really complex in this 30 minutes, but it'll give you an idea of the thought process that I go through when I'm trying to figure out, hey, this is what I want. Let me see if I can build that for you. All right. We'll build a mock-up, we'll prep our Excel file, and that's really kind of where we're going to cut off there. So here's our overall procedure. And if anybody has done any of our training before, chances are you've seen this slide, but we break up our report writing into 3 stages: our pre-development, our development, and our distribution. And I liken this to taking a vacation, because I like vacations, right? Pre-development is where we do all the planning. Where are we going to go? Are we driving? Are we flying? If we're driving, where are we going to stop? Are we going to have to get a hotel room, right? And when are we going to leave? Right? So these are all the things that we plan ahead of time. So that way, once we get into our vacation, our development stage, then we are ready to go. We know where we're supposed to be, what we're going to do, where we're going to stop, who we're going to see, and when we're coming home. It's not just I hopped in the car and I drove off and hopefully I have a good vacation, right? Which is what a lot of people do, is they just jump in the car and they say, I'm going to start writing my report. And then they stare at an Excel file and don't know where to go. And then the distribution stage, that is, going back to our vacation analogy, this is where I get to come back and show you all of my pictures and you get to be jealous of my vacation. But this is where we just make the report available. What we want to focus on today is just this pre-development. This is, where do I get started and what should I be doing in order to get myself organized for this development stage, right? So that's what today's topic really is all about. And we can see in our pre-development stage, it really is all about creating a mock-up, creating a roadmap where we're going to figure out what should it look like, what filters should I be using, what tables and fields should I be using, and then just getting ready with our Excel file. And you'll see once we're all done, the benefit of that, okay? So the main thing we want to really focus on is building our mock-up. And a mock-up is just a visual representation of what that final report should be, but it is going to give us a roadmap of what that report should end up looking like and acting like, right? When I think about a mock-up, there are certain things that I need to know when I build a report. I need to know, is this going to be a grouping report or a not grouping report? Or is it just going to be a list of things? Or do I need to break up a list of things by some other list of things? And maybe I've got multi-level grouping, right? So that's one of the first things I think about. Then I think about, what are my column headers? What are the things I need to see? I can't just say, give me this report. I don't know what's important to you in this report. So you need to tell me what are the things that you need to see, and those are going to be my column headers. I think about filters. How is this report going to be run? How often? Who's going to be running it? How is it going to be used? These are all questions I like to ask when I'm working with a client on formulating this mock-up and this idea of what this report is going to be. Because if they say, well, I run it once a month, I know I'm going to need a date filter in there, right? Because I need to be able to say, well, for January and for February and for March, right? So those are things that I think about. Sorting and totaling, those are really just kind of formatting things. Do I need to reorganize the list in some way? Do I need to show subtotals and totals in my report? Right? Those are easy things to do most of the time. And when we talk about our mockups, there's a couple different ways we can build them. We can draw them by hand. I like to draw them out on a piece of paper or on my big whiteboard, and so I can do all kinds of stuff. It could be an existing report that either another product created or maybe you found online that you liked and you want to mimic it. It can be any number of things. So it can be an existing report that you just scribble all over. Or it can be an Excel workbook, and that's how we're going to build our mock-up today, because you can't see my whiteboard. I don't have a report to show you, so we're going to build it in Excel. Now, here's kind of an example of taking an existing report, and I'm pointing out some of the key things that somebody did in this mock-up. The first thing is grouping. Do I need it grouped? Yeah, I need item returns grouped by customers. Okay, fantastic. So there's a little note so I know about grouping. I can also see that it's grouped here. And then I need to think about, okay, well, what are the things I need to see? Well, they highlighted these things in yellow. Oh, whatever this was, I don't need to see that. So these are the things that are important to me. Okay? Then I think about my filters. I might need to run it for one or all customers or a salesperson or a return reason. I can see I've got my sorting in here, sort by customer. Now for me, that's really vague. I would say sort by customer number or sort by customer name, because I do have both of those factors in this report, which is a thing that I really need to sort. So I'd want to be a little bit more clear with my client what they really mean by that. And then we can see we've got subtotals, right, already built into this report, but it doesn't have a grand total. So we'll just throw that in there, a little note. Hey, I also need a grand total down at the bottom. So this is a really good example of kind of taking a report and just noting things all over it. But again, we're going to take this request and just go through this same process. So the payable manager came to me and says, hey, I need a list of vendors that we made a payment to in 2016. And in this report, I'd like to see the vendor name in alphabetical order. I'd like to see their phone number and the total amount of payments that we made to each of them. And ideally, I'd love to see a grand total at the bottom so I know over the course of a year how much in payments we made to our various vendors. So this allows me to see each individual vendor and then a grand total at the bottom. Okay, that's a pretty decent report request, to be honest. There's not a whole lot of information in there, and then I might ask some more questions, but I think that's a pretty good solid start. So they must have worked with us before and kind of know what we're looking for. So the first thing that I like to look for is this going to be a grouping report or not? Well, this request is not going to be a grouping report. I can tell you that right now. But some of the key things I listen for or look for are keywords like subtotal. If somebody says, oh, I need to see a subtotal for each of my vendors, then I know I need a grouping report. Or this needs to be broken up by that or separated by this. Right? Those are things that hit my ear and go, ooh. Or for each something like customer, show me all of the individual invoices. Right? Those are things that might tune in that say, oh, maybe I need to do a grouping report. Maybe I need to show the customer number and then all of the invoices and then another customer number and then a bunch of invoices. Most often we do the grouping when we need subtotals, but sometimes there's other cases where we just need to physically segment and break up that data just for organizational purposes. So those are things to kind of look out for. My report didn't mention any of those things, so I'm going to assume that this is not a grouping report. The next thing I need to do is figure out what are my columns. And when we talk about our column headers, they can be, most of the time, are going to be things that are in your database. Customer number, customer name, sales, payments, all those types of things. But they won't always be. Sometimes they're going to be calculations. Sometimes they're going to be VLOOKUPs. Sometimes they're going to be other Excel, formulas and functions, right? So kind of think about that too. You're not restricted just to JET, right? We're working in Excel. We have access to a whole bunch of Excel functions and formulas. So those might be columns, and I'd still include those columns in my report. If we go back to our mock-up here, in fact, what they had is this was a calculation, this minus that, and then did a percentage of that to return how much of that was returned. They didn't really care about that. This isn't something that is in the database, so they just didn't really care about it too much, okay? So as we think about our report, the last thing we always want to include in our column headers are unique identifiers. And unique identifiers are those things that will uniquely identify entities in my database, whether it's a customer, whether it's a vendor, or a GL account, or an item number, right? Even if they're not requested, we know as we build reports, we need that unique identifier to uniquely identify things, right? If I'm building an employee list, I always go back to this example. If I'm building an employee list, I might have 2 Tom Joneses in the company. It's not unusual. They have the same name, so their name isn't unique. And how do I differentiate between those 2 Tom Joneses? Well, I use their employee ID number. Right? So we need to include those even if they're not requested. So we actually come across that in our example here, right? She says, I'd like to see the vendor name, the phone number, and the total amount of payments. But I know the vendor name is not unique. The phone number is probably unique, but I'm not going to identify customers and sales based on a phone number. And my total payments, well, that's a sum calculation. So I need to include my vendor number as one of my column labels, right? So something to think about as you're building your reports. Then once I've got my grouping or not grouping, I've got my column headers, I start thinking about my filters. How is this going to be used and what are they requesting? Well, I know I need 2 filters based on the report request itself. I have a date, which probably implies that she's going to run it for 2017 and 2018, or maybe the first quarter or the second quarter or a specific month, right? That brings up that conversation. So I have a date filter, and I like to put in what I think it's going to be, date, and a sample value here. If I don't know what the value might be, I just might put in a wildcard. I want to be able to run it for a specific salesperson. I don't know which salesperson that is, so I might put in a wildcard. Document type, that comes with knowing my database and the tables a little bit better, but I know this request, I'm going to go to a transactional table and I've got invoices and credit memos and payments and finance charges and all kinds of different stuff. So I need to filter out all the non-payments. And then we're including the vendor number. Again, another one of those they're not requesting, but in the conversation of how do you use this report, they might say, well, every now and again I need to check on a specific vendor. I shouldn't have to run the entire report for 5,000 vendors to look for this one, right? So we might build in some additional functionality to that. Don't go crazy with those optional filters because you're limited to 10, right? So kind of think about how often it's going to need that filter. How often are you actually going to use that? Right? And that might dictate whether you include it or not. But I think this is a really handy feature. Okay. So let's take a look at what this might look like. I'm going to open up Excel and kind of take it up to this point, right? We also have our sort, right? It said I want an alphabetical list. It's not showing it in my request here because I just changed this up this morning because that's how I roll. And it said I need grand totals at the bottom, so I know the grand total of my report request. And Excel is taking its sweet time opening. There we go. So here we have, what I do is I like to create a little sheet here. If I'm going to do it in Excel, I'm going to call it my mockup. And I can come in and say, well, the column headers that I need, vendor number, vendor name, I need the phone number, not up, and I need the total payments. Now, this is one way of doing it, right? I can come in and I can format this. So I know these are my column headers, and there's different techniques that you can use. I can come in here, and some people like to actually put in sample data. 1, 2, 3, my vendor namer is ASO, FGA, GKL, and my phone number is 555.555.5555. Go ahead and give that a call, and we'll copy that down. And my total payments, everybody, was exactly $1,000. So some people like to actually put in fake data when they're building it in Excel, right? I can come in and say, well, I need a grand total here too, and my total is not 30,000. That would be bad math. And they come in and they just do all their little formatting so they can say, well, yep, this is exactly what I want my report to look like. If I need a sort, well, I don't really have a great way to just draw an arrow on here. Well, we do. I come in and I insert a little shape. And if I need to sort something, I might put it just like this. Hey, this tells me I need to sort the vendor name. You know, you can put the arrow up or down if you need a reverse sort or sorted, but this tells me, oh, I need to sort on the vendor name. I need a grand total. These are my column headers. I didn't get my filters. Well, filters, I just like to create a little section over here. I'll call them my filters, and we'll put in my date. We needed the doc type, and we wanted the vendor number. Okay, and my date 01/01/16, 12/31/16. Document type of MOP, payment, again, can't type today, and vendor number. So the nice thing about this is, even if I come back to this in 2 weeks, right? I go on vacation, I start this process, I come back and I have an idea of what I want, what my filters are going to be. I don't forget about what those things are. Okay? Another technique that I personally prefer, I don't like wasting my time with putting in fake data. So what I do is I just put in vendor number, name, phone number, total payments. And if I need a grand total for these, I might just put GT, or I might put in grand total, or I might, if I'm drawing it on my whiteboard, my grand total is 2 lines. That represents grand total for me. It's a little harder to do here. If I needed a sort, I do the same thing. I just copy, I'll paste this down there and say, yep. I don't have to put in that fake data. But some people like having that. It's a nice little kind of comfort to them to say, yeah, this is kind of what I will like. Now, this was a non-grouping report. What if I needed a grouping report? Well, again, there's a couple different ways you can do it. If you're doing fake data, your column headers are going to look exactly the same. I just need to visually break up and show my fake data with that information. But for me, again, a lot of work to put all this information in. So what I do is I put my primary list here, and I drop down 1 row and put in my secondary list. That's how I represent a grouping report. If I need a multi-level grouping, I just keep dropping down and I'd create another little list here and another little list here. And you can see I need a subtotal and a grand total. It's a really easy visualization of that information. Again, arrows for any sort of sorting. This is my roadmap. Almost there. But I think I could pass this off to other people and they would have a really good idea of what this report should look like in the end. What filters do I need? Easy. What should it look like? Do I need sorting? Yeah, there's an error. Oh, I got grand totals. Do I need grouping or not grouping? It's really easy to see that. Okay. So Stephen, I do see your question. That's an easy one. What version of the software are you showing this on? I'm just using Excel at this point. This is completely, it doesn't matter if you're using Express or Professional or 2012 or 2018. Right now, I'm just showing this in Excel 2016. So all the work that I'm doing, this really isn't any JET functionality. This is just all Excel and planning. And this could have been easily done on a piece of white paper. You just can't see a white paper on my computer here. So great question. I wanted to at least address that. I see some other questions in there. Hopefully I'll have some time at the end. Okay. So now I at least have kind of a mostly complete roadmap. I know what it's going to look like. I know what I need to filter. I know what I need to sort on. The last little stage, and this is where a lot of people struggle, is organizing your thoughts as to where those column headers should come from, right? Each one of those little column headers represents oftentimes a query. Well, I need to know what table to go to and what field that is going to be. It's not always the same. Vendor number might not be vendor number in the database. It might be number, it might be source number, it might be vendor number, it might be sell to vendor number, or buy from vendor number, I should say. Right? So there's a lot of different things that could go on, and you want to make sure that you are ready. Again, as I walk away from this, or if somebody else takes over, it's really important that they're informed. Okay. So this is what mine ends up looking like. I did the research, and I find that I need a couple different tables. In certain tables, again, that vendor name, even though that's the column header, it's actually just called name in that date in that table. Okay? And so I think this might be a really good topic for a future success series. What are techniques to finding data? What are techniques to understanding your database? Right? So if you think so, right, that's something you can always put in the little comments. When we're done, we're going to get a little survey. We're going to ask you how we did, what you thought of it, what you thought of me, and what are some topics you'd like to see in the future. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of time to dive into this topic. I think it's a really valuable topic, but it's also a longer topic than I have available to us. So this is just what I do. I organize it. And what do? Just so you don't watch me sit type, I typed this already. So I just put together my thoughts like this, and I might just put them just like this. Now, anybody can come in, and they should have a good idea. If they know how to use JET, I've given you all of the information that you could possibly need in order to build this report. You know where to go, what it should look like, what should be filtering on, what you're sorting on, where I need my totals. This is a really complete roadmap for your data, right? For your report. And this is ultimately the goal of what we want in our mock-up, all of this information. Now, I have this slide here real quick just to kind of talk about that where do I find data. I think the first thing you should really be relying on is the JET browser. I think it's an awesome resource, and we could spend a half hour just talking about the JET browser and different ways you could use that to your advantage. The rest of these are just go talk to people, right? Go out face to face, pick up the phone, get some answers to your questions. I think those are really valuable resources. We forget in this day and age that people are a fantastic resource for information. But of course, there's also our good buddy, Google. You can go out and Google the heck out of things and hopefully find some information too. So these are just some ways you can help find your data to fill out that little table. The last thing we want to do in our mockup and our report and our pre-development is just get our Excel file ready. And this is one of the reasons why I like sometimes doing this in Excel when I'm working with clients. Again, they can't see my whiteboard. So even as I brainstorm, they're like, what are you doing? And I'm just talking to myself. If I do this in Excel, right, the first thing I want to do is create an option page. And on my option page, all I'm going to do is put all of my filters on there. That's it. Once I've created that, then I'm going to create my report page. And on my report page, I need to bring over the titles of those filters. I'm going to use a cell reference to grab the values of those filters, and I'm just going to put in my column header. So what does that stage look like? Well, this is what I would do. I would come in and I'd say, okay, here's a sheet. I'm going to call this option. You can call it option, options, parameters, banana pancakes. Don't care. As long as somebody can come back and know what it is. Let me grab on my mockup. This is why I like doing it in Excel with clients. I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it right over here. Voila, I didn't have to do any other typing. I know those are my filters. Again, just general rule, stay out of column A and row 1. Those are reserved for JET keywords, topic for another day, but just stay out of that area for right now. Okay. So I tend to put all mine starting in C3. Then I'm going to create my report page, and I can call it report. If I know this is going to be my payment report or vendor payment report, and maybe I call it vendor payment report. Okay, but these are just general names. It doesn't really matter in the end. And again, another nice thing, let's grab our filter titles. I copy those and I paste them on over here. I'll use a cell reference to bring over those dates and document types. So option C4. And I just use the fill handle. If you keep it in the same order, look at that, copying and pasting, super easy. The last thing I need to do on my actual report page is just grab those column headers. Well, I've already got it formatted and in the order that I want. I'll come over to my report page. I like to break up my report like this. Voila. Now I can save this and I can come back to this. I could give this off to somebody else who's a designer who's comfortable using Jet, and they should be able to build my report. I've given you all the information. I've prepped the file the way I like it. Now go forth and build this report. Okay. So that is all of our pre-development, right? It's the first stage of our report writing procedure where we're going to take a report request. We're going to dissect it to build a mockup, to build our roadmap for our future development. You need to do a little bit of research for your data, and oftentimes that's talking to other people. I know it's scary, but we got to do it sometimes, right? And then we finally just prep our Excel file. So that is really that planning. I'm ready to go on vacation. I'm ready to write my report. And that is all I have for you today. So thank you for joining us today for where to start. Don't just jump right into your report writing, do a little bit of planning. It's a little bit of work in the beginning, but it saves you so much time in the end, especially when you're working with collaborative reporting. It helps everybody be on the same page. So I see a few questions and I've got a few minutes. I'm going to go back and look and see if I can answer them. One of the ones we have is somebody would like to see best practices on learning the tables. I think that would be great. I have a JET report with 3 departments, all have expense lines. How can I combine 3 expense lines? Hopefully you can help with that. That's not one of those things that we could cover in this topic. That might be best for consulting hours because that is a very specific request of how do I combine 3 expense lines into one for 3 different departments, and I need to know a little bit more information. So Winnie, I'm sorry I don't have a great answer for you on that, but you can always reach out to our services team and we can get you hooked up with a consultant who can work with you on that one. Another one we saw up there was, it's a big long question, so give me Paul. I need to build a GL report in Dynamics GP in 3 segments, but would like to use only the first 2 segments. Again, this is more of a how do I build this specific report request, and that's great for consulting hours, not something I would be able to really cover in this little section because that is unique to you and your business. So again, you can reach out to our services team, Jet Services at jetreports.com, and we can get you set up with a consultant or an analyst to work with you on those specific requests. So thank you again. Come back next month, right? Check out the Jet budget tool. The month after that, we'll talk about BI and how it relates to our products. And until then, have a great day if you want to. Jack Ambrixy had a great question here. Can you add grouping to a table builder report, or is that mostly reserved for pivot tables? So again, kind of out of the scope of what we're talking about here, but I can certainly answer that. Table builder cannot build a grouping report because it's building an Excel table. Right? In an Excel table, you can't build grouping and subtotals. You would have to build a pivot table off of that. Okay. So thanks again. I'll stop the recording and we'll see you next month.